Welcome everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the resolve that People's Republic of China should substantially reduce its international extraction of natural resources. So for a bit of context, I was supposed to do this topic in a public forum, but due to unforeseen circumstances, I never got to. So today I'm going to be presenting my affirmation case for this topic. According to the Associated Press, China's citizens and companies are frequently in the spotlight for environmentally damaging practices, exploitative labor, and eliciting mining in several countries. There have been multiple cases of illegal mining arrests and prosecutions involving Chinese nationals in recent months. In the same article from the Associated Press, they talk about the horrific conditions that child laborers are forced to work under, such as 6-year-old Juliet Samanaya, who works for less than $1 a day. Hello. Today, I'm going to be arguing for the affirmation. The People's Republic of China should substantially reduce its international extraction of natural resources. Today, we will argue two main points in favor of the proposition. Firstly, Chinese international resources extraction directly causes neo-colonialism, where China asserts control over dependent states. And secondly, the exploitation of these states by China in the form of labor, human rights abuse, and environmental degradation. For the purpose of this debate, we'll be primarily focusing on Africa, as it is one of the major economic battlefields of this natural resource extraction. According to the Wall Street Journal, China is now the continent of Africa's largest trading partner, with its trade with Africa reaching $114 billion. Our first main point is that Chinese natural resource extraction leads to neocolonialism. Cambridge University attests that neo-colonialism is a form of political domination in which a dominant state exercises objectionable influence over disadvantaged states, usually for economic exploitation. And Miami University says the reality is that China's strategy is self-referential, with strategic economic asymmetries and a failure or unwillingness to condemn oppressive African governments. China is creating a climate in which countries are increasingly more reliant on an authoritarian state for their economic needs. Therefore, there is direct neo-colonialism as a result of Chinese natural resource extraction, which causes harm to dependent African government and incentivizes Chinese exploitation. This transitions us to our second point, exploitation. Again, we will break it down into two subpoints: labor and human rights abuses and environmental degradation. First, we'll start with labor and human rights abuses. According to the Human Rights Watch, Chinese-run copper mining companies in Zambia routinely flout labor laws and regulations designed to protect workers' safety and the right to organize. Additionally, they say miners in Chinese-run companies have been subject to health and safety abuses and labor conditions and long-time government indifference. The Wilson Center makes a shocking declaration. Children work 7 days a week for more than 12 hours using rudimentary tools. They are also exposed to radioactive materials, injuries, and disease. These are explicit examples of the Chinese disregarding human rights in Africa. Now, we move on to environmentally. The world would have stabilized its emissions 10 years ago if it weren't for China, says Laura Midlria for the Center of Research on Energy and Clean Air, points out to BBC. According to a NATO report, these activities of resource exploitation have detrimental effects on local ecosystems, including deforestation, soil erosion, and water pollution. And the American Foreign Policy Council says these negative impacts on water resources, forests, and biodiversity, livelihoods and health, and food security across West Africa have been profound. National or regional policies and enforcement mechanisms have failed to adequately address the environmental impacts of mining in this region. Therefore, China is exploiting the people and the land of Africa with horrific working conditions, and they're destroying the earth in the process. Therefore, we would urge that the People's Republic of China should substantially reduce its international extraction of natural resources for our main reasons of neocolonialism and exploitation. Thank you. According to the Human Rights Watch, an underground miner at the non-ferrous China's Africa, the NFCA, told Human Rights Watch they consider production, not safety. If someone dies, he can just be replaced tomorrow. And if you report the problem, you'll lose your job. And this is the reality of these Chinese company in Africa. They do not care. They only want what is beneficial for them. This same article shows that there is persistent abuses in Chinese-run mining, including poor health, safety conditions, regular 12 hours, even 18-hour shifts involving arduous labor and anti-union activities, all in violation of the Zambia's national law and international labor standards. This demonstrates that both worker exploitation and they have a distinct lack for the Zambian people and their laws, connecting back to this neo-colonialism, where it's only beneficial for them. They do not care about the Zambian laws and the people they are directly exploiting. Another report of coal mines in Congo, workers described a colonial era level of discrimination, being kicked, slapped, beaten, insulted, shouted at, and sometimes pulled by the ear when they were not able to understand instructions in Mandarin or made errors or refused to undertake dangerous tasks. They described it as a colonial level era of discrimination for not being able to speak a Chinese language in Africa. This further shows us that there is an extreme level of abuse in these Chinese companies that make it extremely unethical. And this level of neo-colonialization, where they completely disregard the humanity and sovereignty of African states, shows us without a doubt that the Chinese should substantially reduce their international resource extraction in Africa. Now, because I don't have anybody to directly respond to, I will respond to a couple of possible points. First, that the Chinese companies provide jobs in Africa, but we would say that the companies already exist locally. Money stays within African communities and employees don't get beaten for not knowing Mandarin. Then Chinese came. According to the Alliance Institute, the DRC Chinese intermediaries have quietly acquired controlling stakes in cobalt and copper mining, often through contracts that never made it public, but guarantee them a right of first refusal on mineral exports. Additionally, many Chinese companies with African operators choose to hire Chinese contracting companies to come to Africa to construct African projects as opposed to providing African jobs to the Africans. It has gotten so bad that today, Africa cited Chinese contractors accounted for nearly 60% of the total value of construction work in Africa. The jobs they do provide include child labor. As the Wilson Center says, Chinese investment in the DRC, there are more than 40,000 children working in cobalt, lithium, and REE mining, only to have exacerbated child labor issues. Another point is that China invests in the state of Africa. However, an article from Today Africa declared that some of the infrastructure financed by China has done little to improve trade or economic development in Africa, as it has, admittedly, also contributed to the increased debt burden of several African countries. And this is the very thing that the investing that the Khan might praise. The kind that provides debt to keep the companies and governments shackled to the whims of the People's Republic of China. This would further exacerbate the deep, disturbing neo-colonialistic ties. The Chinese investments also ignore the human rights. Miners from the Chinese-owned companies described consistent poor health, safety standards, including inadequate ventilation that can lead to lung diseases, the failure to replace workers, damaged product, and failure to replace damaged productive equipment, and the routine threats to fire workers who refuse to work in unsafe places underground. Both of these points, that the Chinese provide jobs and invest in Africa, are blatantly false. China only cares about benefiting itself and will do that at the cost of Africa. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope it has given you something to think about. If you have any comments, questions, something that you think I said wrong, have an own refutation of yourself, feel free to let me know, or not. And with that, thank you.